Hello, it's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the Prime Minister promises to get it right on welfare reform as he tries to see off a humiliating backbench rebellion. Sir Keir Starmer told the Commons today that he and his MPs want the same thing, but at least 126 of them have vowed to block his plans to cut benefits. We'll have the latest. Also ahead, 2 police officers sacked over the strip search of a 15-year-old schoolgirl. The girl, known only as Child Q, was wrongly suspected of carrying cannabis. Today, a police disciplinary panel called the search disproportionate and humiliating and said the incident had done significant harm to the community's trust of the police. Plus, as Grenfell survivors relive that deadly night back in 2017 for a new documentary, I speak to a resident whose campaigning for building safety began long before the disaster happened. And the main stages don't actually open until tomorrow, but the party is already well underway at Glastonbury. We'll go live to Sky's Katie Spencer. He's at Worthy Farm. Well, let's come. But first tonight, Sir Keir Starmer returned to the House of Commons after the NATO summit today and walked back into a deepening conflict with his own MPs over welfare reforms. Now, the Prime Minister says he and his MPs want the same thing, but at least 126 of his backbenchers are vowing to block his plans next week. Today, Sir Keir said he's having conversations with rebels, but he insisted the vote on Tuesday will still go ahead. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has this report.
A Prime Minister on the global stage this week at NATO to talk about defence spending, but instead finding himself fighting a domestic battle over welfare. You are not going to offer concessions, you're pressing on.
We're pressing on with a vote on this because we need to bring about this reform.
Earlier in the week, the Prime Minister had attempted to hold the line.
Are there plenty of people and noises off? Yes, of course. I'm comfortable with reading the room and delivering the change the country needs.
Keir Starmer.
But today, accepting this fight over benefit cuts, one he couldn't win. The government will make concessions on its planned $5 billion of cuts in an effort to avoid a potentially devastating Commons defeat.
I recognise there is a consensus across the House on the urgent need for reform of our welfare system. All colleagues want to get this right, and so do I. We want to see reform implemented with Labour values of fairness. That conversation will continue in the coming days so we can begin making change together on Tuesday.
The PM with no option but to start that conversation after the number of MPs backing an amendment that would have killed off his welfare bill rose to 127 overnight. This Labour MP, one of the latest to add his name to the list.
The big problem is the PIP changes. I recognise much of what the government's trying to do within the bill, but that was the big problem.
Has number 10 just misread the mood of the party?
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's misread the mood of the party, but I do know that the policy needs to change, and, you know, it may be that the government are listening. I certainly hope they are.
The opposition calling out the PM for blinking on the cuts.
The Prime Minister is in the fight of his life. He is trying to save some of the government's welfare changes that don't even cut the overall welfare budget. They only slightly slow down the rate of increase. And that is because his MPs are too scared to make difficult decisions.
No, those decisions delayed Harriet Harman explaining the government's next steps.
So it'll resolve by, in the second reading, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Liz Kendall, will get up in the debate on Tuesday and she will say, here is this bill. I want you to all vote for it on second reading, but I know that a lot of you are unhappy about it. So I am going to make the following changes in it, and I give you that commitment here from the dispatch box.
It's worth taking a beat to reflect on the enormity of this moment and what it means, because a year ago I was standing right here, the bunting was out, and Keir Starmer was walking into Downing Street to a chorus of cheers, having won a landslide victory. Now he is facing such a rebellion from his own MPs that he is being forced to climb down on his welfare reforms. For a Prime Minister to face such a challenge so early into his premiership, well, it's just simply unprecedented. This is a humiliating blow to his authority from a parliamentary party that has felt ignored by Downing Street. And while they may be able to patch this up now, the lasting damage it's doing could be much harder to repair. After days of intense international diplomacy, the PM back in number 10, personally hitting the phones in a bid to talk MPs around. His immediate task is to get that welfare vote across the line next Tuesday. The harder task will be rebuilding the trust. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, that was the politics, but what about the people whose day-to-day lives would be affected by any restrictions on disability payments? We've been to Bristol to speak to some of them.
I'm Theo, and I receive full rate PIP, which means I get full rate mobility and living rate each month, and I receive universal credit after being signed limited capability for work, so I receive the health top-up as well currently. And I'm a sole trader in between that, so when I have capacity and a clientele, I take on commissions of artwork. And as far as universal credit, it looks like I will be completely dropped on the health component due to my age. I'm 19, and so I would be qualified as a young person, and we wouldn't be able to claim health rate anymore, which would half my universal credit each month. And I'm meant to be living independent. I'm meant to be able to afford to be living independently right now on the benefits I claim. At the back, it says they want an arm and a leg, but I can't walk. They are saying they're trying to get us back into work while cutting people's access to work provisions. My entire community is at risk. That means it's my support network. If these cuts come into place, not only is it going to get harder, but it's going to become so much more of an uphill struggle to take any leeway back.
Yeah, so my name is Megan Belcher. I'm director at Bristol Disability Equality Forum, and we're an organisation of disabled people where disabled people make all of the decisions. Our members are worried. We've got so many disabled people, you know, kind of a part of our organisation. We're all disabled people ourselves. People have felt really kind of vulnerable, really threatened. They feel like it's just another thing on top of their everyday life that they have to deal with, and they feel like it will mean that they cannot access the world as everybody else can. And as disabled people have not been involved in the conversation around these reforms, I don't think that anything that has been suggested could possibly work for disabled people. It is just more expensive to be a disabled person living in Britain currently, but for a disabled person to do the same thing as everybody else, it requires more support. And that is why the welfare state was created. It was to try and create a more equal and more equitable society. And this almost feels like we're regressing. We're moving back in time, and we're demonising people who need the most support. I don't think what the government is defining as protection is what disabled people feel is protecting them.
Well, much more on this topic ahead of next week's vote. Now, another big story today. 2 Metropolitan Police officers sacked. This is after they were found guilty of gross misconduct over the strip search of a 15-year-old schoolgirl. The girl, known only as Child Q, was mistakenly suspected of carrying cannabis. And the search was carried out without an appropriate adult present at a school in East London back in 2020. Well, Sky's Molly Malone has been following this story for us today. And Molly, gross misconduct was the finding, but these police officers no longer have jobs as a result of what happened.
Yeah, 2 of them don't have jobs anymore. This was a misconduct or disciplinary hearing, if you like, looking at the action, the conduct of 3 Metropolitan Police officers back in December 2020. And it came about, as you said, because of a 15-year-old black schoolgirl. While she was at school, she was strip searched. She was called Child Q, that's to protect her identity. She was on her period at the time. She was strip searched alleged while she was at school. She was wrongly suspected of carrying cannabis, but nothing was found on her. The investigation later found she was taken out of an exam, put into a room and strip searched by 2 female Metropolitan Police officers while her teachers were outside of the room. Now, this particular hearing was looking at the actions of 3 officers. 2 of them have now been sacked. The 3rd one has been issued with a written sanction, a written warning. The Met have today apologised to Child Q, to her family, to the community. I think we can hear a clip of Commander Kevin Southworth now.
I'd like to offer my deepest apologies to Child Q, to her family, the school, her friends, and the whole community affected by what happened that day. To be clear, this search should never have happened. It was disproportionate, and we have gone to great lengths since to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again.
Now, the panel had to consider a whole range of things to see if it amounted to gross misconduct. They looked at things that, like the fact that an appropriate adult wasn't there during the search, the fact that the Met officers didn't get senior authorisation to conduct this search. They looked at whether she was discriminated against because of race and whether it was inappropriate in the first place to do the search. That it was deemed to be disproportionate, unnecessary and inappropriate. On the issue of racial discrimination, a safeguarding investigation found in 2022 that race, in their words, was likely to have been an influencing factor in the overall treatment of Child Q. But on the strip search specifically, which is what this misconduct hearing was looking at, well, they said, the panel, we do not draw any inference that race was an effective cause of this incident. But the hearing did note how, in their words, concerns about drug and gang involvement had initially been raised by school staff. But this entire case at the time sparked outrage. It sparked protests in the community in Hackney. And I put it to the IOPC, which are the body that regulate police complaints, that is there some way to go to convince and to restore trust and confidence, really, in policing after we saw such outrage for a number of months by the black community? And this is what they had to say.
I think that there's a really broad consensus at the moment that issues around race discrimination still exist in policing. And that is not to say that there isn't progress being made, but there is a huge amount of work going on at the moment and a recognition within policing that more needs to be done here. So I would cite things like the National Police Chiefs Council Action Plan on Race. There is progress being made. There's a lot more that needs to be done.
Well, Molly, what happens next? Because what happened to Child Q and her family, hugely traumatising. This happened back in 2020, but the effects still being felt, not just within that family, but, as you said, they're within the community. And the issue of race was mentioned, not brought up in the specific misconduct hearing, but it is thought that, again, overall, it did play a factor at some point, in the community's minds at least.
Well, yeah, and certainly that's how the family feel. The Met have today apologised. They've said it wasn't just the fault of individual officers, and actually there were organisational faults as a force, that actually inadequate training, they weren't properly trained about how to conduct and when to conduct these strip searches. But yeah, as you mentioned, Child Q was found to have had PTSD in the months after the incident that happened. As you can understand, she was a vulnerable 15-year-old girl, and actually we've been hearing from her solicitor this afternoon, who's been speaking about what they would like going forward and what they'd like to be considered.
Child Q's family's hope was and remains that her experience might represent a turning point in how the police treat black children in particular, but there can be no change without accountability. So while the family welcome the panel's findings and the firing of 2 of the 3 officers, they also note that the police have not taken the opportunity presented to them by this case to grapple with the structural issues of race, which continue to undermine their standing with Londoners of all backgrounds.
So as you heard there, they feel it's structural issues of race. It's something that the IOPC nodded to as well. So even though the general misconduct hearing didn't find race to be a factor, clearly the family, via their solicitor there, feel that it's something that they want to be considered, want to be looked at in the future, as policing promises that something like this will never happen again.
OK, Molly, thank you. Molly Malone following that story for us tonight. Now, more than 1 million people in the UK are currently taking weight loss and diabetes jabs. And now there's a warning that they could be associated with a potentially fatal side effect. The medicines regulator is investigating reports that there could be a link between these drugs and pancreatic problems. 6 deaths have been recorded with links to Ozempic, Mounjaro and Wegovy, although it's still unclear if the medication is a direct cause. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore explains.
It's a healthy diet and exercise that Lorna uses to help control her weight these days. She had tried one of the brands of weight loss jabs, which she bought online, and was initially thrilled to be losing 3 to 4 pounds a week. Then one night she suffered what doctors believe was a side effect to the drug, an inflamed pancreas that needed hospital treatment and surgery to remove her gallbladder.
My legs were shaking, I had the pain. Oh God, it was horrific.
Now she says the jabs just aren't worth the risk.
I went to bed absolutely fine, completely normal. And then 2 o'clock in the morning, I just woke up with horrendous pain in my stomach. I was sick because of the pain. I was getting a fever. I was curled over with pain in my stomach. It was like someone had just stabbed me in my stomach.
Lorna's not alone, according to new data from the UK's medicines regulator. It found 181 cases of pancreatitis linked to Mounjaro. 5 people died. And there were 113 cases of pancreatitis linked to Ozempic and Wegovy. 1 person died. There's no evidence the drugs directly cause the deaths, and people who don't use the drugs can also develop pancreas problems. But the medicines regulator is starting a new study to see if some people have genes that predispose them to potentially dangerous side effects. This scientist says the risks are higher in people who are using the jabs as a lifestyle choice.
The risks associated with being obese far outweigh any risk associated with these drugs. They're not drugs for aesthetic reasons. It's not a new weight loss fad. This is a medication in the same way that people would take blood pressure medication or painkillers. These are medications used to treat the disease of obesity.
Eli Lilly, the manufacturer of Mounjaro, said patient safety was its top priority. It said adverse events could be caused by other factors, including pre-existing conditions. Novo Nordisk, the manufacturer of Ozempic and Wegovy, recommended patients take weight loss drugs only for their approved purpose and under strict supervision of a healthcare professional. But Lorna says her experience should be a warning to all.
I've got friends now that are, going on it, knowing what's happened to me, but they just want to be small, they just want to lose the weight, they just want to feel nice again. And I'm constantly going around saying, don't do it, it's just not worth it.
More than 1 million people are now on weight loss jabs with astonishing health benefits for people with obesity and type 2 diabetes. But they have become a social phenomenon, and that makes some doctors uneasy. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
7 people have been taken to hospital, 2 in a serious condition. This is after a bus ended up in a river in Hampshire. Emergency services were called to Eastleigh this morning after the double-decker came off the road. It was carrying students from a 6th form college. 14 of them were treated at the scene with less serious injuries. More than 500 families who say they've been harmed by maternity services in Oxford are calling for the hospital trust to be added to a major national investigation. Testimonies from patients and their loved ones include stories of national C-sections guidelines ignored, unanswered calls for medication and unsympathetic staff. And now they're calling on the government to act. Our health correspondent Laura Bundock has this next report.
The birth of Morgan's second baby still haunts her. He was born by caesarean and rushed to special care.
There were midwives who believed that I was just too lazy to have a natural birth and said that I had made my son poorly by being lazy.
These careless comments from a midwife made Morgan feel like a failure.
Even though it was recommended by doctors that I had a caesarean, it was medically necessary, I felt like I should have done more to help him. Sorry.
And how are you now?
It still hurts to think back on it.
Morgan's among the 500 families calling for an inquiry into maternity care at Oxford University hospitals. Their testimonies speak of traumatic births and unsympathetic staff. I felt uncared for and ignored. I felt I was going to die. Annika had 3 miscarriages before giving birth to her son. She was refused a caesarean, contrary to national guidelines, and offered no pain relief despite repeated requests.
I'd said so many times that I was anxious, but it just never got taken seriously. It just kept getting brushed off, and they were just ignoring me. I was saying I was in pain. They were like, oh yeah, we'll get you something. Never did. It's clearly they never intended to.
Maternity care at Oxford University hospitals requires improvement, according to the latest inspection. It's not alone. Across England, 65%, almost 2/3 of acute hospital maternity services are judged either inadequate or requires improvement for safety, not one rated outstanding. There have been 3 independent investigations into maternity failings, with a 4th in Nottingham ongoing. Between them, they've made 125 recommendations. But services are still in crisis. The Health Secretary, Wes Streetings, ordered a system-wide review. 10 poorly performing trusts will be scrutinised. The Trust says women are offered caesareans, and it's arranging to meet campaigners. The chief nurse told Sky News, "We regret any instance where we fail to provide the service that women and their families should expect. When this happens, we make every effort to review individual cases, to understand what went wrong and how we can improve. We are never complacent and welcome all feedback, whether positive or negative, as we learn from both." But those living with the trauma of their births want more. Their campaign won't stop until real change comes. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Oxford.
So to come here on the UK Tonight, we'll speak to a survivor of the Grenfell fire on his fight for justice 8 years on, ahead of a new documentary into the disaster.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
8 years on from the deaths of 72 people in the Grenfell Tower disaster, survivors have relived that night and their fight for justice in a new documentary. It tells the story of what happened through their eyes, and it lays out the damning evidence presented at the official inquiry.
We raised concerns with the council. We were labelled scroungers. We didn't deserve anything, so just shut up.
There are thousands of buildings that still have the combustible cladding.
Feel free to ask me as many questions as you like, but use your time wisely.
Right. 72 people died.
We still don't know who's going to be in prison.
We just want justice.
It's heartbreaking, unbelievable cruelty.
Everyone is blaming each other.
Dishonesty. Malign governance.
Why did this have to happen? Why?
Well, I spoke to Eddie Daffan, who you saw there in that clip. He's a survivor of the Grenfell fire. His campaigning on behalf of the building's residents began long before the disaster happened. And I began by asking Eddie why now is the right time for this documentary.
Now the evidence has been presented in a court and we know how some of the companies acted and how the government acted and how deregulation played such a crucial role in Grenfell, how the behaviour of certain companies played such a crucial role. And the Netflix documentary has forensically taken that evidence and in a very plain and simple way, over 100 minutes, lays it out so people can understand quite how badly and how catastrophically the behaviour of government, the behaviour of these companies impacted on our community.
I know your name well. You were seen as a thorn in the side of the local council and the tenant management organisation. You're effectively described as the man who predicted what would happen in the tower block where you live.
We got that our landlord was not functioning as a proper landlord should function. The landlord wasn't putting the concerns and the health and safety of its residents first. I thought long and hard about how I would describe my landlord, and they were a non-functioning organisation. They behaved like a mini mafia, and they're not shoot from the hip expressions. They're like the most accurate description I could find to describe the way that our landlord treated us. And then, I mean, I think what's kind of most significant about that is like post-Grenfell, we find that we weren't alone in being treated that way. And in fact, social housing residents up and down the country can relate to that description of their landlord. We are treated like second-class citizens. You know, like we were pointing out quite obvious health and safety concerns that were not being addressed by our landlord. And rather than being listened to and respected, we were demonised and we were called, you know, troublemakers, rebels. And, you know, I think for me, what's kind of most upsetting about it is that 8 years after Grenfell, I'm not sure that that has significantly changed.
We've covered Grenfell since the night of the tragedy, through to the inquiry, the results of that inquiry. And little has changed in terms of there are hundreds of still unsafe buildings here in the UK. People, we've heard from them saying they feel unsafe going to bed at night, wondering if they'll wake up in the morning. Lives ruined because they can't actually move from that unsafe home because their home is worthless. They can't sell it because of the cladding and the cost of replacing it, the inaction of those who are responsible for making that building unsafe. What do you hope that this documentary will do? Because we've seen what, for instance, Mr Bates versus the Post Office has done. We've seen what adolescence has done for particular issues in society.
Standing under the smouldering carcass of Grenfell in the days after the fire, I was absolutely convinced that that event, the loss of 72 lives in such a horrific way, would be the catalyst for change. I mean, I was kind of naive in believing that it would lead to some sort of societal change, but what has happened is that we're just stuck where we were. And for me, what's most important about this documentary is that it acts as something that galvanises people to understand that, as you've described, as we're talking now, there are thousands and thousands of people going to sleep in buildings covered in exactly the same cladding as Grenfell. There are disabled people who have the same lack of planning around their evacuation as before Grenfell. There are stay-put policies in place. There hasn't been a single arrest related to Grenfell. And that needs to change. We need to have movement. We're 8 years now after the fire. I always think of Hillsborough and how Hillsborough became a generational struggle for justice. And if anything comes out of Hillsborough, it can't be that Grenfell turns into a generational struggle. So for me, I guess what I'm really hoping is that this documentary alerts people to the fact that, yeah, Grenfell happened 8 years ago, but the issues that it shone a light on have not been resolved. And, you know, we need that to change.
I have spoken to those affected by what happened that night, survivors, who are pretty convinced that there may well be another Grenfell. And the country's riding its luck for 8 years that there hasn't been. Is that something you're convinced of? Completely.
I mean, the government, local authorities are playing a perverted game of Russian roulette. As long as there is this cladding on the outside of buildings, there is a potential for another Grenfell to happen. I think there have been a couple of fires. I mean, there have been some fires in other countries that have led to fatalities. We've basically got away with it in the UK. But yeah, this is like, this cladding is like liquid paraffin, and it should not be on the outside of any buildings anywhere in the UK or anywhere in the world.
It's so upsetting hearing from those who did survive the tower, because you were a community at Grenfell.
Absolutely.
And people lost neighbours, friends, 72 residents died, 18 of them children. The overriding sense is just how avoidable this was. And I think that needs to be underlined.
On the night of the fire, we were literally crying in the streets, and you know, it's my belief that we should still be crying in the streets now at the lack of change, at the simple injustice of what happened to us. It's like, as described in the public inquiry, this was an avoidable tragedy.
And you getting out of there was luck, because you originally followed the stay put order, because that's what you've been told, right? You knew how unsafe that building was, but in that blind moment of panic where black smoke is filling your flat, you decide to stay put. But it was another resident that called you from the street below, and it was that phone call that saved your life, right?
It's like 1,000,000 to 1 chance that I'm actually here talking to you today. I went to my front door, opened the front door expecting to see my neighbour outside, saying I've burnt some food or whatever. Opened the front door and then was just confronted by this, like, thick black smoke. And my first thought, as you say, was to stay put. At that moment, I received a phone call from a neighbour of mine who'd already exited the building, and he shouted at me. He just said, get out of the building. He said it so powerfully, he said it in such a way that I literally just didn't question him. I just went to the bathroom, wetted a towel, put it around my mouth, grabbed my phone, grabbed my keys, left my flat, and had to make my way to the emergency stairwell, which was about 5 metres across like a kind of a communal hallway where I could not see in front of my nose. And instead of finding the exit, I found a wall, and then I let go of my towel. I started panicking. I started pouring at the wall. And I was literally like, I'm not going to get out of here. And then at that moment, a firefighter came through the door on the floor and literally bumped into my leg, grabbed me. Him and his colleague pulled me out, and I was able to escape from the building. Had they not been there, and they weren't there for me, they were there to come and rescue my neighbour. My neighbour never made it out. So it was an extremely traumatic and awful experience.
Eddie Daffan talking about his experience the night of the Grenfell disaster as part of that Netflix documentary that is available to watch now. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. We'll be heading live to Worthy Farm, the party well underway already at Glastonbury 2025. We'll take you there. Now, it's probably where we'd all rather be, but you're here with me. Glastonbury, though, I'm going to take you there. I'm good to you, aren't I? If we're spending this time together, let's head to Glastonbury. The main stages don't open until tomorrow, so I can't show you any of the big acts. Huge crowds already there at Worthy Farm, along with our very own Katie Spencer. Some of the acts that she will see, the 1975, Olivia Rodrigo. And Katie, I'm so glad to see you are representing friend of the show, Sir Rod Stewart, the big act this weekend.
Friend of the show, Rod Stewart, who I am already. I've come dressed in Rod Stewart leggings. I have my Rod Stewart T-shirt that I am proudly wearing. Absolutely very excited for his legend slot. He is going to be phenomenal. That slot as well, he's managed to get extended by an extra 15 minutes because he argued with the organisers that he had so many songs to cram into his set that he needed more time. So it's going to be a monster set that we'll see from him on Sunday. But as you said, look, there's all of those brilliant headliners as well. There is, if there's one sort of talking point ahead of this weekend, there's a lot of uncertainty really about what viewers who are at home watching will get to see in terms of Neil Young, who has that headline slot on Saturday. He is somebody that is famously anti-establishment. In the beginning, when he was sort of making the decision about whether or not to do this, he spoke publicly about feeling that he wasn't a fan of the fact that the BBC were involved and how heavily they were involved in this, describing this as the fact that he didn't like the sort of it was a corporate turn-off was how he put it. And we know that he's actually not officially listed on any of the TV schedule itself, so we suspect there's a lot of speculation going on at the moment that it's going to be sort of 2 or 3 songs that will end up going on TV, but not the whole set, which is a disappointment if you're not here, of course. But look, there's so much else that is happening at Glastonbury in terms of music. It doesn't officially get underway until tomorrow, but look, you can hear behind me, it's already sort of kicking off. There's various stages, Shangri-La's behind us, so you can hear the music from that, but there's various bands when you wander around that are playing, and we're going to talk to you one now. We have a band that is so epic, they had to bring a wheelbarrow to get one of their drums up here. It's She's Got Brass, and we're going to talk to Deanna, who is the band leader. Deanna, explain what the band do then.
We are London's only 10-piece female brass band, and we are just at Glastonbury to play a bunch of shows to help the festival keep on going and just help you know what I mean, just keep the Glasgow spirit alive, basically.
We need you. The weather isn't always 100% reliable, but you guys bring the summer vibes.
Indeed we do.
How long have you guys been going?
We've been going since 2023, like summer 2023, and this is our second ever Glasgow. That last year was Glastonbury was our first ever festival, so it was pretty intense, but this year's it's a walk in the park.
You know what you're doing now. When you say it's a walk in the park, there's a lot of walking that you need to do, particularly with that wheelbarrow to get up the hill here. You haven't got the lightest of instruments either.
No, we don't.
Did you have any sort of regrets over the fact that you chose these?
Well, I do my best to try and get transportation and just a lot of stuff, so to make it just that little bit easier. We've got a wheelbarrow, we've got a trolley, and then occasionally stages help us out with transport, which is great, and we're very grateful for all of that.
Look, a lot of the newspaper headlines are about the sort of the headline acts, the sort of main famous artists, but part of the sort of glorious thing about Glastonbury is wandering around and discovering acts like yourself as well. I mean, do you guys even get any time off to go and listen to other people?
Well, luckily, rarely. We have tomorrow off completely. Apart from me, I'm going to play with Self-Esteem on the Park stage, which is going to be great. I'm super excited for that. But yeah, other than that, we've all got the day off tomorrow, so it's going to be, happy days. And then Saturday night, we've got 12:30 a.m. at Rum Shack, and then we've got 4 a.m. at Law Stage. So
4 a.m.
We're going to do the southeast corner slog, but we're happy for it. That, like we say, everyone's got to everyone does their bit, keeps the festival going. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, you're excited about playing with Self-Esteem as well. Tell us, I mean, she is one of the sort of standout acts that's playing this year.
So excited! It's been so amazing to be a part of that whole journey with her, and I'm just it's really.
She
amazing.
Always puts on. It's going to be quite a sort of spectacle as well, won't it? Should we expect sort of a big grand stage?
Definitely. It's choreo, dancing. We're dressed as like, I don't want to give too much away, actually. Let me
take that back.
Yeah. But yeah.
I think the one thing that we need to do is actually hear you guys play as well.
Please.
We worked out what we're going to be hearing.
Yeah, we're going to play a rendition of our original tune called Honk, which was written by Sophie, our tenor sax player.
Fabulous. Well, we will leave you guys to it then.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. It is just like being there. Look, don't get jealous if you're not at Glastonbury. Just look at this. You can watch it in your slippers. There's no queue for the bar and decent toilets. We get all the best bits without any of the rubbish stuff. There you go, Glastonbury Festival. You can follow it here on Sky News. And Katie Spencer rolling her eyes at 4 a.m. That's only halfway through the day at Glastonbury. Oh, they were great. Katie, if you can still hear me, give her a round of applause from us. We really like that. Right, still to come on the programme, we'll have the sport for you and we'll be asking, is this the greatest tennis shot of all time? Some experts today certainly think so. We'll take a look at it in a bit more detail. And from football to cricket, the director of Bend It Like Beckham will be in the studio to tell us all about her latest venture.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis. Up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live. All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirm that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight. We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, I'll be speaking to the British Indian director behind Bend It Like Beckham, who has turned her attention to a new sport. Details on the way. But first, David Garrido is here with the sport, and we were talking about Glastonbury before the break. Have you ever done Glasgow?
No, I mean, things. I'm not a massive muso, right? But I did used to work for Radio 1 back in the day. When I was in my 20s, a long time ago. You remember it, you remember it.
I remember the days.
I mean, it was, I have to say, it was the kind of halcyon days, right? It's never been the same radio station. No, but they obviously do big weekends, right? And as we were just saying in the break, they don't go to the big cities, they go to other places. They went to Maidstone in Kent, and I saw Madonna in Maidstone.
Madonna in Maidstone.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go, see? That's what I love.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
I think she greeted the crowd saying, "Hello, Manchester," if I'm right. Probably wasn't the smartest
OK, we'll leave it there
move,
before our lawyers get in touch. Check that little fact out, shall we? Should we talk about Jofra Archer? From Madonna to Jofra Archer, there's a link. He was a World Cup winner, of course, Ashes hero 6 summers ago now.
Yeah, it's mad,
that's gone really quickly. Bit of a forgotten man on the Test cricket stage, but he's finally back in the England squad.
Yes, he is. He's been recalled to the squad for the second Test against India. England having won the first at Headingley in dramatic circumstances. He's been added to the squad, no other changes. So if you're Brendan McCullum, God, he's a great option to have, isn't he? We know that this man on his day can bowl, around 90 miles an hour, which is rapid in terms of fast bowling. But of course, he's had all of these injuries. He's had the particularly the elbow and also the back, multiple surgeries as well. So you sort of wonder what Jofra Archer 2.0 is going to look like. But yeah, I mean, like he's an incredible option to have. But the temptation really is, do you maybe stick with the same side that won against India the first time around? But I suppose the other thing is that, this is a man who really terrified Australia in the Ashes in that same summer. He took 22 wickets over 4 Test matches, decent return. And of course, after this series against India, it is Australia in the Ashes away next. So massive year for England, and good to have this man as an option.
Sure is.
All right, so that's as far as cricket and Jofra Archer is concerned, but some big games football-wise over in the States to tell you about.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last 1.5 or 2 years, and they're taking their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of Virtual Soccer Schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world, and utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure, and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
Allow yourself to be disappointed.
I enjoy passing on experiences, if it's...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
And now, my next guest is best known as the acclaimed director behind a firm film favourite, Bend It Like Beckham. But now Gurinder Chadha has turned her hand to a different sport.
This summer, England take on India. For the very first time, 3 teams, 3 series, 1 rivalry.
Well, Gurinder is with me now, and of course you've guessed by now, it's cricket that we're talking about. Really good to see you. A really sort of exciting film there, getting us excited for England-India. Of course, that famous cricketing rivalry. How did you get involved?
I got approached by the England and Wales Cricket Board, and they wanted to just shine a torch, really, on women's cricket. And I'm like, why not? I did it with football. Why can't we try this? And so it was great. We had a day at Lord's with some fantastic cricketers. And I've also tapped into the rivalry, as you say, between India and England.
It's passionate but friendly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's passionate but friendly, and it's a party. Everyone goes down there, has a party, and sometimes it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing.
Yeah.
You know, it's all the same. It's just the love of the sport.
Yeah. It doesn't quite have the sledging or the edginess of the England-Australia rivalry, does it? I think that sort of England and India, they tend to sort of rub along together nicely because of the cultures merging in this country, right?
Yes, and also India do... I mean, I think they're matched, you know.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
India's feeling great and India's off on one, and
Yeah.
then suddenly England's just won. And, but this is the women's game, right? So it's fantastic that that the cricketing, you know, Sky, everybody is sort of involved with the women's game as much as the men's game. I mean, I grew up with the men's game, and when I was a kid, you know, as soon as the matches were announced, the series was announced, that was it. No work was done in my house by my dad. He would sit on the ground, not even on the sofa. He was on the ground. He had a string vest on. Yeah. And he was all like, like this. Oh, Jakoya. Be like, oh, it's a sixer. And, you know, it's the days of Bish and Singh Bedi. And so... I grew up with all that sort of excitement around a sport. And so for me, I feel very warm about cricket because it's the love of my dad and a lot of my uncles and cousins. Yeah. But I think what we're doing here is sort of making sure that people understand that come and have another go, because it's not only the men versus, you know, the men's game, but it's also the women's game. But there's also a disability league as well. So it's
transferring all of that excitement across all the different teams.
Yes.
And you've got Danny Wyatt-Hodge and Heather Knight in there in that film. And, you know, people have said whack it like Wyatt-Hodge rather than bend it like Beckham. Because can we talk about bend it like Beckham? When I was sort of looking at my notes earlier on, that was back in 2002.
Yes.
And it was a real sort of cultural moment when that film came out, because you talk about, you know, the women's cricket game getting a lot of attention now. You sort of started that movement for girls and women's football with that film. Can you just talk about how you have seen the landscape change in the, you know, over 20 years since that film was out?
Well, I couldn't get arrested when I was trying to make the film. You know, everyone was like, a film about girls playing football? Are you joking me? Ha, 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 ha. Like, I'd get laughed out. Yeah, it'll never work. Who's going to watch that? You know, big financial source was... Someone said, you know, they'll never find an Indian girl who could bend a ball like Beckham, so we shouldn't finance the film. I mean, it was all that, really, but I just thought, no, there's something about football and sport which goes beyond the sport itself. And at that time, I could see in the zeitgeist England was changing and what England represented in sport was changing. And that's what's happened, you know. And so, it's an immense... I feel immensely proud that I have been able to help in the creation of champions. I mean, the England team, the Lionesses, you know, they're champions, European champions. Let's hope they go to Brazil and become world champions, you know. But, to see that, to see not only them succeed, you know, in the sport, but to see so many young women play the game and come up to me, you know, and wherever I'm in the park and I see girls playing, you know, and I wouldn't have seen that before, but just see it now, it's fantastic. And sometimes I go, oh, have you seen that film, Bend It Like Beckham? Yeah. And they'll go, no.
Like I said, it's a film classic and one that's still very well regarded to this day, which you must be very proud of. And I'm really... really glad that you've turned your attention and sprinkling a bit of your magic on the game of women's cricket. Gurinder Chadha, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about it. England against India. It's not just the men, it is the women as well. And as you said, the disabilities team as well.
Yes.
Yeah, the party this summer. Yeah.
Get your tickets, come all the girls together.
Yeah, it's going to be a long, loud summer.
Long laugh, yeah.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. We're going to have a look at the weather now.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Looking pretty unsettled in the north and the west, but temperatures are on the up over the next few days, especially in the south. Parts of England will see heat wave thresholds being met once again. Many places looking fine this evening, but the north could expect some showers. The southwest, more general rain, blustery in the south. Southern Britain will have a spell of rain overnight, which will clear later.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
That's all from the UK Tonight. We're back on Monday night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it's The World with Dominic Wackhorn. We'll see you next week.